In this video, we're going to learn about machine configuration and orientation to set up PartNester to the same configuration that your machine is. First, we have to understand about your machine's configuration and where the machine origin is and what is your X and what is your Y. So regardless of what machine you own, X always travels left to right. That is, X is across the width of our screen and Y is across the height of the machine. Some machines have a longer X-axis. Some others have a longer Y-axis. So that's one that we have to understand. But regardless of what axis is longer, X is still always left to right. Most machines have XY0 set to the lower left corner of the machine. So with it being set to the lower left, X moves to the right in a positive motion. The Y moves up in a positive motion. While that is common in most machines, there are few out there that have the 0,0 origin or the home origin to the upper left and upper right. Now what that means, if it is in the upper left, that is still going to have a positive X motion, but all values in the Y axis are going to be posted out as a Y negative value. So as the Y moves down, if 0,0 is to the upper left, when Y moves, that is a negative motion. So that is specific to your machine, and knowing what your machine's configuration is and the origin is important to know to set up the origins within PartNester. So again, most machines have machine origin to the lower left corner of the material with the X positive to the right, Y positive going up in the height of our screen. Now that that is covered and hopefully understood and added more clarity than confusion, we're going to take a look on how to set up the machine to have a different configuration. So first, we're going to go and look at our settings and see what configuration we have set now. So currently, the X is the longer axis, set up with the X being 96 and the Y being 48. We have the grain parallel to the length. So that means that the grain, if we are working with plywood, the grain is moving in the direction and is in line with the X. If your machine is set up to have a longer Y-axis, we could change the 48, the X to be 48 and the Y to be 96. And we will now have to change the grain to be parallel to the width, meaning the width here is the Y-axis, and setting that up, we'll now say OK to this, and we will have to renest or recalculate the parts for that change to take effect. We can now see that the X is now the shorter axis. X is still across the width of our screen with the origin positioned to the lower left, and we have the Y being the longer axis across the height of the screen. The nesting origin or starting of nesting starts at the lower left. In some cases, it is nice to have the parts being nested off to the top left, top right, or bottom right. To change that, again, it's going into Tools, then Settings, and we have the option off on the cut order on the right side of our settings. We could set the nesting to begin at the top left. Once that is set, close the settings, going into Tools, then Renest. The parts are now laid out as to the upper left, in this case, machine origin is still set at 0, 0 across the bottom of the screen. Now, if your machine is set up to have an origin at the top or at a different location rather than the bottom left, we could go and set that by going into Tools, Settings. I'm going to change us back to X being longer with a width of 48 and changing that grain parallel back to the parallel with the length and setting the origin to the upper left. We could close the settings, and to apply that, we will calculate new parts. So currently, two things that have happened here. One is when we post out, since I've set the machine origin to the top left, the posted files will have negative Y values and positive X. And again, that is only if your machine origin is to the top left rather than to the bottom left. To change that or to verify that, going into Tools, Settings, and we have the machine offsets in 0 set to the top left. Again, most machines are going to have a 0 origin to the bottom left, and also having the Z0 set to the table surface and not to the top of the material. Having this set to 0Z to table surface is where most machines and automatic tool changers will set the Z0. Hopefully that adds some clarification to setting up machine origins and setting up PartNester to match your machine origin.